All right, welcome to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. Thanks for joining us. We got a full show for you tonight. The end might be over, or the season might be over for the Vikings, but you can't get rid of us that easily. We're going to continue to be here as emotional support people for all of you, and let's get it going.
Welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, where we mix our favorite beverage and talk of your Minnesota Vikings.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. I'm your host, Matt Anderson, joined tonight by my co-host, Ryan Ortega, and producer Dave is back there behind the screen, but he likes to come out on Wednesday nights, mainly to drink, I think, and just show everybody's what he's drinking. And something that we have in common with the Vikings, actually, is that we've lost our roots. The roots to this show were all about drinking, sharing what we had, and we just as the season heartbreak continued, we kind of lost that path. And so let's start there and pick up where we started this season. So Ryan, how are you and what are you drinking on this fine first Wednesday of 2022?
I'm doing well. Obviously season's over and that's tough, but doing pretty well. We're heading to Disney on Monday, so we're doing a lot of that
Oh,
pre-packing and all of that stuff right now. So a little stressful in the Ortega household, a little bit. My wife's bearing a lot of that burden, but yes, it's good. And yes, I'm drinking tonight. finally finishing off that double oaked Woodford Reserve
Oh,
that I had purchased,
I like
and
that.
I'm happy to get through it. It was good. It's a good bourbon. I'd recommend anyone who likes kind of a stiffer, less sweet bourbon. It's really solid. I'm one that typically drinks almost all my bourbon neat. And this one I need ice. I can't drink it just straight. So I'm finally finishing that off, and I feel like I'm going to drink a lot tonight, just given what we're talking about and whatnot. So
Absolutely.
I did pull out my new bottle of Four
Four
Roses small
Roses.
batch to
Let's go.
open that up. Again, I got a couple more treats up in there, but I'll save those for another day.
Which
That is
Disney are you
awesome.
going to?
We're going to World down in Orlando. So I
Okay.
think I'm going to be in Joseph's part of the country over here. And
Oh,
yeah, we'll be there for a few days. First time for all five of us. My wife and I never went as kids, and of course our kids haven't gone yet. So should be fun.
it'll
Should
be
be.
exhausting. I'll bet you that.
I can,
enjoy
I can
enjoy
imagine.
the enjoy, enjoy the alcohol now before you get down there because it's going to be a lot more expensive too.
In the park,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. Uh, Dave, before I get to you, shout out to everybody in the chat. It's already, I mean, the show just started, and I feel like the comments are just flying through. So, a couple things put in the chat what you guys are drinking tonight. I've seen a couple. Mary's hanging out with her buddy Captain. So there you go there. And then later in this show, we're actually going to do a little bit of a Q&A. So if you guys have questions you want us to answer, I know sometimes the shows get a little bit packed, but we have some time in tonight's show made out for that. So thanks for joining and put some comments in the chat there.
Hey,
Dave,
Matt. We need to
yeah,
put a Bundaberg rum. Stephen Powers drinking that. We need to put that on a
okay.
list to maybe try at some point here. He says finest ever. So I'm not a huge rum guy, but I do enjoy it from time to time. So might have to give it a try.
All right.
Cool.
It's 2022. It's an opportunity for new things. Don't be afraid of change.
Hey,
Dave, what are
look at
you drinking
Joseph
tonight?
there. Ryan, willing to
Ooh,
buy you a
I
beer.
always, I always got you, Joe. Whenever you're ready.
I am drinking another light circus hazy IPA because I put it in my beer mug, glass beer mug that matches the icons of this show
let's
because
go.
that's what we like to do. Tito's, anyone?
Uh,
Vodka?
yeah,
Nick?
Nicholas is asking about Tito's. I don't know. I mean I drink Tito's with some like mixed drinks, but I don't know if I've ever sipped it. Maybe it's good. Kettle One I think is a good one to sip if you're going for vodka.
Yeah, I'm not much of a
Texas
vodka
Tower
drinker myself.
is the one I
If
like.
anyone's drinking tequila in the chat, let us know there.
I got
Um,
so many bottles up of tequila up there. I'm ready to bust that out.
You
I
should.
when the ball dropped, my wife and I took a nice little shot of the tequila. That's always a good way to go.
What are you drinking, Matt?
well, so I mentioned it pre-show with just you two, but I was fortunate enough. I don't know if fortunate's the right word, but I was in Lambeau this past weekend. Uh, I just want to say that I was in Lambeau. I don't really remember it, and therefore tonight I am not really drinking much of anything besides tea. I think I might be
Ooh,
coming down with a cold. I guess I could splash some. Would you splash whiskey into tea? That doesn't
Yes,
seem
that's
right.
well, and if
yeah,
you
you
have
would.
it warm, it's a hot toddy. Yes, and it does help. It
Oh
does
shit.
have medicinal
Yeah,
purposes.
I was gonna say if you're feeling a little sick, I always start with the bourbon when I'm feeling a little sick, and that just
Oof.
cleans your head out, kills everything.
Man,
Blackberry brandy for Raymond.
I don't know if I could do that. Man, I'm loving all well, I'm loving all the drinking tonight. Not myself, but for you guys, that's
Are you
that's
still
fantastic.
hungover from Lambo? Is that what it is? You can't keep you. Hey,
Yeah,
why don't you tell the show about the little adventure you had at Lambeau? I want to hear about the car drive home. I want to hear
oh
about
yeah.
the whole Lambeau adventure here from Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about it. So a few of my buddies and I we went down to Green Bay for just a weekend. They're all Packer fans. So we drive into town Saturday night. We watch. Was Saturday the Winter Classic? Was that on Saturday? Yeah, it must have been.
Yes, it was. Yep.
Watch the Winter Classic. Hit some of the restaurants in Titletown for dinner. Stay up pretty late Saturday night partying. Sunday comes, and the only way to stay warm when it's cold out, aside from bundling up and being an adult, is to just get drunk and get as drunk as you possibly can. And that was really my mindset going into that game because I paid money to go watch Sean Mannion quarterback this team. So
The
I didn't
great
want to
Sean
remember
Mannion.
it. So yeah, so we go to the game. We pregame very heavily beforehand. Uh, Next thing I know, I'm waking up, heading back home on Monday, and about 2 hours into the 4 hour car ride, we just had to we had to pull over for a hot second because I, I was not feeling the greatest, and after we pulled over, I felt better. So
Good.
that
Still
read
not
between the
great, but
lines
better.
there.
Well, you were definitely on the "I love you, man. I love you, man" kind of level of drunk on Sunday night. So
Well, Anthony
Well,
empathizes with you and said it would be understanding after that last game.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's if you haven't gone to Lambeau before, I highly recommend. It was a great time. I wish the outcome would have obviously been different, and so do a lot of the people in the Vikings organization right about now. But um, I wouldn't drink as much if you go. That would just be my only advice. So,
hey,
um,
by like I don't know, mid afternoon, I definitely was like, I think Matt's probably going to be passing out in the stands by halftime. That was just
hey,
based on the text we were getting.
yeah, well,
Hey,
I don't.
hey,
Wow.
you got to
Okay,
enjoy it. You got to enjoy it. I love it. I love when you get like that. You're boring as hell right
exactly.
now.
He's
So
a happy drunk.
Boring.
he is. He is the happiest drunk. Actually, I love it.
Yes,
Well,
Dan, yes.
Ryan, I'm going to have you recap the Vikings Packer game because I think the only thing I saw um, was my seat. Probably, I don't really remember a whole lot from the game. Have not gone back to watch it, nor at this point do
No,
I care
you don't
to.
want to.
Uh, so Ryan, give me a little recap on what you saw on Sunday, and what inevitably destroyed our playoffs hopes.
Yeah, I will start out by saying that obviously it didn't help not having Kirk Cousins, right? Like for all the I guess, negatives we talk regarding his contract or his leadership style or whatever, he still is a damn good quarterback. Like, I don't think anyone out there is going to sit here and say he's not a good quarterback. I think the worst you'll hear is he's an average one, but I think most educated fans will say he's above average. Like he's pretty solid.
Yeah,
So missing a player of that caliber in an important game, and again, people will go back to, well, if he was vaccinated again, I think he tested positive like super late in the week. So even if he was vaccinated, he still
He
would have had to
still would
gone
have
through
been out.
protocols. There's
Mhm.
no way he could have made it to the game. So I don't think the vaccination status really mattered in this situation.
not to
Outside
not
of
to go on
maybe,
that, but is that true? Because Brian O'Neill's already back.
yeah, yes, you have to. He would if you
If you're
test positive, you have to test negative twice within with a day and like a 24 hours, right? So he would have to
Okay,
test
if you're
negative
vaccinated.
on
If you're
if you're
unvaccinated, it's 5
vaccinated.
days.
Yes, it's
correct,
5 days
correct. Okay,
automatically. But I think when we've heard the news, wasn't that Friday? Maybe
Mhm.
it was Thursday.
yeah,
I can't remember. It was late in the week, I remember, because Mania didn't even get all the first team reps like that week. So I just
He
knew
got
that we
bumped.
were in some trouble, and people were up in arms about it. Again, I don't want to get into vaccination talk here. That's not what I'm here to do. Regardless, we're missing our best player in terms of best quarterback, I should say. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why we decided to go with Sean Mannion. I understand, I guess, the fact that he has a better grasp of the playbook. He's been with the team for the last few years, But when you're going against a team in the cold that is relentless after the passer with a weak offensive line, you're going to put yourself in position that a statue of a quarterback and I'll say this outside of that one run Mannion had where it looked like he was pulling a semi tire behind him as he was running, like he made it Kirk Cousins look athletic. And we all know how athletic. I mean, and when I say athletic, I'm trying to put it in perspective of an NFL player, right? Like obviously Kirk's more athletic than any of us, but from an NFL perspective, he's not athletic, right? So Sean Mannion made Kirk like athletic. So you have a statue back there who basically I think where I've learned where Kirk Cousins had learned to, because Sean Mannion was brought in to be kind of like a mentor coach, kind of, second coach, QB coach to Kirk Cousins. And I think I learned where Kirk Cousins learned to check the ball down so much. It's Sean Mannion. I mean, that dude was checking the ball down all game long. He finally took a couple shots near the end. Obviously, when we had to, it was already out of reach. But I mean, it was just a pathetic game. It was pathetic offensive scheming, offensive game plan. I don't understand. I mean, again, Mond got in for 3 plays, almost threw a pick 6. Again, throughout the game, if you have a player with Mond's abilities, not his skills or his skill set, not his mental, so to speak, but he's going to be able to run around. He's going to be able to scramble. He's going to be able to create a little bit more. And I'm not saying he's going to execute but if you're able to kind of scramble around a little bit and allow your really good receivers and, Jefferson, Osborne, Dede, to utilize that time to get open, it's hard to cover for that long. You might have been able to create a few more opportunities downfield. And then plus, have to worry about the rush that Mond brings as well as Dalvin. And then that brings me to my next point. We did not, I mean, I bash Zimmer for saying, hey, we need to run the ball more. We need to run the ball more. We did not run the ball enough in this game. You do not if you're going to trap Sean Mannion out there, you're not supposed to have him throw as much as he did. Like, you're supposed to hand the ball off to Dalvin, create some unique schemes. Let's get some motions. Let's get some jet sweeps. Let's get some opportunities. But you need to keep the defense kind of on their heels, but still be able to effectively run the ball. We weren't able to do that. I think they were trying to throw to open up the run, which just isn't what we do, and it's not the skill set Mannion has. I think you can do that with Kirk, but overall offensively is awful. Defensively, I know we ended up letting up a lot of points by the end of the game. We had a hell of a first half. I mean, I thought they played well. I think they held them to 6 points in the first quarter, or maybe 3 in the first quarter.
It was 3 in the first quarter, then 3 more right before half. They stopped.
No. They scored a touchdown at half.
Okay,
they
stopped them 4 times in a row.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Offense went 3 and out. I think 5 times in a row.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You're right, Dave. Yeah. So I think our defense did their part at least in the first half. And again, you needed them to. You needed them to do that all game if we were going to have a chance, because Sean Mannion didn't give us one, unfortunately. So pretty pathetic game. I was very frustrated. Matt, you and I might need to talk about this tonight. I know you're a big Zimmer guy. I am too. I like Zimmer. But when your job's on the line, which it was, and you're leaving it up, the analogy that I use is he did death by 1,000 cuts instead of just taking a shot and getting blown up, right? Like he went with Sean Mannion, who gave you 0 chance, but it was a slow bleed because whatever. At least if you went with Mond, or if you tried something innovative in that sense, you maybe get an opportunity where you strike gold. And he didn't give himself an opportunity to do that. He laid the $5 table minimum bet every hand that game,
instead of trying to hit a jackpot with Mond. And I'm not saying it would have worked. Probably isn't. The casino, that's where they make their living, is off of people who try to hit the jackpot and lose right away. And then they go back to the ATM and try again, right? He could have done that with Mond. He didn't. I felt like that was just a sad move by Zimmer and a sad way for him to go out with this team.
Hey,
because I
man.
think he
Gets
deserved
to
better
go out
than
on
that.
Sunday with Kirk, so not
Which is a whole
technically
other
sad way
issue.
to go out.
Whole other issue.
Well, I mean, we can talk about the Zimmer thing because I had it in the show notes as something to talk about. Is Sunday's game going to be Zimmer's last game as the head coach of the Vikings? I think the fan base is probably like 2/3 yes, get rid of him, and then the other third is probably like even still split. Like, yeah, I could go either way. He probably should go. But Chad Graff of The Athletic released something today. He said the Wilfs were going out and having a meeting to talk about potential scenarios after the season, whether that's replacing Rick and Zim, keeping one or the other, however it goes. So yeah, do you think, Dave? I'll leave this to you because I know Ryan's thought on it, and he can chime in here too. But I think people can kind of figure out where he would go with this answer. But I don't know if I know specifically what you're feeling, Dave. I mean, you're an offensive line kind of guy. You played football. You like that kind of like tough, aggressive nature in football, and Zimmer brings that. So what do you think? Do you think Sunday is kind of a game where it's probably his last, or are you in favor of trying to see if it'll work one more year?
I believe, and I've always liked Mike Zimmer, and Jason will tell you, I've always been his biggest advocate out of the Climb in the Pocket group. But this year, I've had enough. I think he's stale. He's lost his fastball. It's time to move on. There is argument, and I've put it forth before, there is a logical argument that if you got, and one of Chad Graff's, I think it was 5 options, is you get rid of Spielman, keep Zimmer, get a new GM, have them work together. That might, and get rid of Kirk. Kirk, you saw the stat that prior to Kirk, we won almost 40% against winning teams. After Kirk, it was just barely above 20% against winning teams. He and Kirk have not gone along. It's obvious. Everson Griffin said he didn't like him. Talking today on the thread, you had a former tight end. I'm blanking. Plays for Giants.
Kyle Rudolph.
Kyle Rudolph
Rudolph
thought he's an ass. There's that part of it. Now, we know that the Wilfs have relationships with both Zimmer and Spielman. Spielman's been there for 16 years, right? Twice as long as Zim. And there's been the finger pointing. You saw it at the beginning of the season. Zim going, hey, I can't make this. We're top heavy. That was this season, right? When they got Kirk, it was, we can't afford this and keep everything else up, right? And that was 4 years ago. It all depends on what mood they are and what advice the Wilfs get. If Zim stays and Spielman's gone and Kirk's gone, that would be an interesting type fit because problem with Zim, he handles some of the responsibilities of being a head coach just fine, right? Other parts he does not. He tends to get myopic on his defense and neglect the offense. As a head coach, it should be all about making the entire team better and focusing on the entire team. And he could take his defensive knowledge and help the new quarterback, whoever that is, become a better quarterback and be able to read and say, hey, if you see this, it means we're playing 4 high. If you see this, it means we're man, right? Whatever it is. But I think we're beyond that point. We're at the point of fire everybody. It's been a disaster. Just get rid of everybody. And that was one of the choices, Get rid of Spielman, get rid of Zim, trade Cousins is probably the way it's going to go. Question is, what happens to Spielman by getting rid of him? Is he promoted to some cushy job, advisor job, where he does not have final say? Or is he released entirely? I don't know. We won't find out probably till Monday. I read that the Wilfs are going to get together and decide on a plan either Saturday or Sunday before the game. So they'll have in mind what's going to happen. But it is.
I'd like to chime in here a little bit on the Zimmer front. Because again, Matt obviously prefaced the fact that he kind of knows where I'm at, which is true. I mean, I think we all know where I'm at here, and it's not really necessarily Zimmer that I dislike, because I really do like Zimmer. I think he's a heck of a head coach. I think he had a lot of shit he had to deal with over the last 6 years that he's been the head coach here, or 8 years, or whatever it's been. And he's had a battle, and I appreciate that for him. Where I guess I have issues, so to speak, is we let a lot of really good talent from a coaching staff perspective go throughout this time here, and more specifically on the defensive side. Jerry Gray, he's killing it for the Packers right now. He's made that defensive secondary a really formidable defensive secondary, right? Like, I mean, you got Alexander, you got the surge of what's the guy's name? You got Chandon Sullivan, but the kid they picked up in the middle of the year who's just lights out. He got the final pick against the Cardinals in that game. I forget who it is. And then their safety duo is pretty darn good. So Jerry Gray,
is that who you're talking about?
Rasul Douglas, that's right. Obviously, he wasn't able to ever make anything out of Kevin King. Early returns on Eric Stokes is meh. But who knows? He's still a rookie. But Jerry Gray was a very, very integral part of this defensive staff that was not retained some way. George Edwards, similarly, very competent, good, strong defensive coordinator for us. And he was let go, and he went on to do some really good things for some other teams. And I look at that as, okay, I know I get a lot of coaches like to kind of stick to owning whatever they're really good at. But if you keep some of those guys around, I think this team's in a much different spot. If Zim acts as a true head coach, a la John Harbaugh, right? Who obviously he gets involved in every aspect, but he doesn't overindulge in any aspect, at least from what we know. Yeah. And look at that staff. Look at that staff and how well that they churn out teams. I know they're likely going to miss the playoffs this year, but like they've had some bad luck with injuries and with health and all that stuff. But you look at that franchise in general, the Ravens, is a franchise you look at and you're like, gosh, I want to emulate that at some point. They're innovative. They're cutting edge. They have a phenomenal GM. They have a great head coach. They're, they retain their offense and defensive staff for the most part. And they really do a great job. And I look at that and say, okay, Zimmer, could we have done that? Could we have retained Jerry Gray? Could we have retained George Edwards? You look at some of the, coaches he's fired. Obviously, DeFilippo was a disaster, but Stefanski hired away. Shermer hired away, and Norv retired. So, I mean, I guess he, offensively, he just kind of got a trash pick of the litter, so to speak. But hiring Clint Kubiak,
that's kind of been his status quo, right? Like that has, like, whatever you think about Mike Zimmer, his tenure here as head coach can be qualified as unlucky. Yeah. No matter no matter what season it was, something unlucky happened. And maybe you look at last year, maybe last year wasn't unlucky. It was just poor planning. That might be the only exception to his 8 years here in Minnesota. And the fact that he had to deal with, COVID being a thing in the NFL last season for the first time, not really understanding the protocols.
Injuries last year too.
Yeah, but even Zimmer alluded to it after the season last year that they probably planned poorly in like
Oh yeah.
letting some of their veteran leadership walk out, and not try and retain them. Uh, but overall, Zimmer's tenure here has been unlucky. Now, I'm not oblivious to the fact. I obviously want Zimmer back. I think that he is a good coach. I do still think he's a good leader. But I can agree, especially with Dave when he says Zimmer's lost his fastball. I don't know if he's necessarily. I think he's still smart, and I think he still knows how to beat NFL teams. I don't think he has a passion for it right now. I think he's so beat down. He's been so unlucky that it's just like he's just having a hard time becoming passionate about what he was so good about. And it's hard, right? You teach and you preach these players week in and week out for the last 8 years, only to see these new guys come in and they can't, pick up your defensive scheme. They're not playing sound gaps. They're trying to do too much, and then you're also like frustrated because rookies aren't progressing, or one of your top corners last year, had off field issues, and now you just lost a first round pick. Like I think it's just all kind of come to a head, and whether or not I want him to be back, I do feel a change is probably necessary for all parties involved, whether it is for Zimmer personally or just the team as a whole. I think I've seen it in the chat here. I think the message is lost. I don't think he's quite reaching these new guys how he used to. I think he's obviously got Harrison's ear, he's got Barr's ear, and he's got Kendrick's, right? And probably Daniil Hunter as well. So he's got his four like original guys that really will go to bat for him. But the rest of them, I mean, they weren't here in the golden years, right? When this defense was dominant. I don't know if they really are buying into what Zimmer's trying to put down on the defensive side of the ball. And then Ryan, you touched on it too, right? Offensively, Zimmer has never been hands-on with the offense. We've seen it maybe this year for the first time when his job's on the line. He started to meet with Kirk Cousins weekly to kind of talk about. That's something that probably should have happened sooner, because I know he did it
And
with
I
Sam
think he
Bradford, and I
was.
know he did it with
I,
Teddy.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
I know he did it in the past. So I just think that, you know, when we look back at the last 4 years, specifically when Kirk Cousins gets here, and it's not to shit on Kirk Cousins by any means, but when Kirk Cousins arrived, Rick, Zim, and Kirk, whether they liked it or not, they were tied at the hip, and they were either gonna soar together or sink together. And unfortunately, here we are 4 years later, and with Sunday looming, it looks like they're all about to sink.
Well, and you look at Zimmer as the kind of the oracle, right? I mean, he called us from day one that you go and spend all that money on a high price quarterback, I'm going to get fired, and that's what happened because he needed his calling card was that defense, and he wasn't able to maintain that high level of defense with that high price quarterback. And again, this isn't Kirk's fault. Like, it's not his fault that we offered him a contract that was lucrative to him that he accepted. Like it is what it is. But in reality, what we needed to do in Zim's mind, and probably is, I think a lot of us would have agreed, is you maybe keep one of those two or three guys from that 2017 quarterback room. Again, this is not, and this, my words will get twisted, right? This is not me saying Case, Teddy, or Sam Bradford is better than Kirk. They're not better than Kirk. With that being said, if we keep one of those guys
I'll
and
say
draft
skill
a
wise,
quarterback that
Bradford
year,
was, but anyways.
well, yeah, right. I mean, from a health perspective, Bradford can't stay healthy, but yes, you're right. I think Bradford's one of the best pure passers I've ever seen. But um, going back, like you keep one of those guys, bet on them to kind of mentor and coach up a rookie. In that rookie class, the quarterback that would have been left over from us in the first round was Lamar Jackson. Again, doubtful that that would have worked with the offensive staff we had or whatever. But again, and then they had second, third round picks that they could have went with whoever. But that's probably the route that should have happened. Zimmer would probably be happier. I think the fan base in general would have been happier in one of those situations. And yeah, it's just crazy. Wayne Wynn, you come up with a lot of good points here. Sorry, we're not trying to neglect the chat here. You guys have all put in a lot of great commentary in here and questions, and we'll get to some of them here in a little bit. But um, you're right. It's not
Yeah,
Kirk's
put
fault for
some
getting offered
questions
the
in the chat.
contract, but it's also like I don't want to put blame on anyone, because if you're Rick, I understand why you did what you did. If you're Kirk, of course you're going to just take you're going to take the best situation mixed with the most money. Which again, I think the Jets offered him more money, but he knew this was a better situation, right? So I get why Kirk came here. I get why Rick did the deed, but I also understand what Zim was saying. And with all those three combined, it just is it was an unfortunate combination of factors that all went in at the same time that just didn't work for the trio.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're all on the same page, right? I think what makes this topic so sensitive amongst Viking fans is we all care about this team so much, and we wanted to see it work, right? We were in the NFC Championship game, and we were led to believe that Kirk Cousins would be that missing piece. That's what we were sold on, and it didn't happen, and that's frustrating. And I get that. Like I feel the same way. I had to watch my favorite player leave because he became so frustrated, and now he's having a great time over in Buffalo. Like it's sad how these 4 years have gone because this is a group that I think we all could have probably got behind it and been happy if they won a Super Bowl. And now we're left to kind of pick up the pieces potentially, right? We're speaking in hypotheticals. I guess we don't know what will happen. There's a chance that Zim stays. There's a chance that Rick stays. There's a chance that Kirk stays for one more year or longer. Hell, today he said he'd like to be a Viking for life. So we'll get
I wonder if
more
anybody
in.
asked him, would he do that if he took a pay cut of $20 million this season?
I think that
See, and
question,
the
Dave.
issue with that though is that he's not a $20 million quarterback though, and that's the hard
Well,
part.
that
Like he's worth
20
more than
million.
20 mil. He's worth more than 30 mil. He is. It's just that it doesn't work for our team the way it's structured. If we came in and we had a if we had like a real like if we were the Browns even, right? If we are the Browns and we had a team that's loaded and stacked, and I and he comes in for Baker Mayfield, maybe we can sell them on the fact that they probably could do what they need to do to get to a Super Bowl or a deep playoff run. But that was the good of Bills we were sold, and it didn't happen with actually one of the same coaches too, right? So, but Kirk
Right.
was probably the most effective under Stefanski than he has been over any coach that he's had here too. So that kind of also plays into it. But but
Amen,
we're not
Joseph.
them right now. We're not there right now. We're not even close to being that competitive. We have a top heavy roster. We're losing like seven starters on defense because they're on 1 year
Yeah.
contracts. They're not even that good anyway. I mean, I don't even know why we're like upset about losing Breland, who has already gone, but and Mackenzie Alexander and Xavier Woods played okay this year. But like we're we're in a tough spot here where we can't just be able to pay him 25-30 million dollars and have it work, because we don't have all the rest of the pieces to afford that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like so it just doesn't make sense.
I'm going to pause this conversation because we have so many weeks of off season to talk about this even more, and that is something else we need to figure out is how we want to roll through this off season. But there is still a game this week. Um, Zimmer has
Meaningless.
said he's yeah. Well, is it meaningless? Because Zimmer's trotting out the starters. So,
It
but I
is.
did
Because
want to get.
Zimmer wants to
I,
say he has never had a 10-loss season.
I do want to. Yeah, that's probably a fair point. I do want to get your guys' thoughts on like what can we look forward to on Sunday? Like if you're gonna watch the game, if you're gonna go to the game, like what is something that we should be watching for and looking forward to? I'm trying to instill
The
some optimism in this
I was
conversation,
going to
and
say, what do we hear coming out of the stands? But part of that will be muffled
Yeah,
because they just put out today that everybody's got to be masked.
well, they might want to dub they might want to reach into their back pocket from last year and pull out the crowd noise, just so we don't have to hear Fire Zimmer or the Boo Birds that come out eventually.
I mean, I just don't
Wyatt
understand
Davis
the
is
point.
didn't practice, Andrew.
I just don't understand the point of playing the starters this week. Like, I'm not saying we need to like intentionally tank. That's not what I'm saying because I'm not really ever a proponent of tanking. But
Well,
there's no
Raymond
value.
nails it. Better draft selection if you lose.
Sure, yeah, and that's great. I mean, we're going to range anywhere from 9 to 14, right? I mean, that's probably where we're
Yeah.
going to land. But like, why are we not trying to get a look at what we have on roster that isn't, already established, right? Like, let's see what Amir Smith Marset has. Let's see what Kene Owangu has as a running back. Kellen Mond, obviously, he doesn't look great,
But
or at least from what we hear. But like, why wouldn't we want to look at that information, gain data points? Like, for example, let's say Zimmer isn't fired, right? You said that maybe there's a little tiny bit of optimism he's not fired, right?
yeah,
Why would you not want to prepare yourself as best as possible for next year to say, okay, Kellen Mond has a future or he doesn't? And obviously, he made that comment that I see him every day in practice and I know what I have in him. Maybe that's good enough for him, and that's fine. But we don't see what he has in practice, and us as fans want to see that. We want to see the progression, and if there is any. But like, we have all this talent that was poured in over the last couple drafts that aren't playing. Chaz Surratt, I haven't seen a snap out of him this year, he was a third round pick.
He played. Didn't he play a little bit early? And then
He
got
did
hurt or
not
something?
play. He did not play defensive snaps. He
But
played special
they
teams.
do
I think.
see him on every day of the week, like he said.
Yeah, I don't care about
But
the issue for me
for
is that
us,
as a fan,
wanting
I
to
want to
see
see
him
that.
is not what the coach focuses on. The coach
yeah.
focuses on how are we going to,
The-
who are we going to put out there? How are we going to scheme them for the best chance of winning? That's it.
I'm not.
I, and I,
I
and
don't want to
I
pin us against you
understand.
here, Ryan.
No, I
I don't want
understand
to.
that, and I'm okay if I'm in the minority here. My issue is that
You're
I
definitely
buy
not,
season
by the
tickets
way.
to the. Well, in this chat, I am probably, but
Yeah.
I buy season tickets to the Vikings. I go and spend my hard-earned money every year. I pour in a couple $1,000s a year just to watch this team.
Thank you, Stephen.
And there's thousands of people that do that, right? Thousands of people that buy
Thanks,
these
Steven.
season tickets. And us as fans, I'm not sitting here saying we deserve a say in it, but like, I want to see what the future of this team is. I know what we have. We have a losing team. We are already going to have a losing record. I already know what Kirk Cousins is. I know what, I know what all these guys bring. And then to add the injury risk. Okay. What if Kirk Cousins tears out his knee this game or Justin Jefferson blows out an Achilles? That already ruins your 2022 season because they're not going to
So
come back into that fast enough.
I have a couple counterpoints, and I'll see if I can get through both of them. The first one is you're obviously a season ticket holder, right? I wish I was a season ticket holder. Hopefully someday. Hopefully someday, as I yell back to my wife. But wouldn't you want to see the best product out on the field, right? Like, you're paying. Like, we just got rid of a preseason game, and now you guys are clamoring for another one because you want to see these guys play. And I get it, right? Like, we want to see the future. We are the fans. We are locked in this hell every single year. We want a glimpse of what we have behind the starters. I get that. But there is literally no incentive, none, for Mike Zimmer, regardless if he's here or not next year, to play, or at least start, I should say. Maybe at some point throughout the game you'll see some backups, but there's no reason to just call this game a wash because when you think about it, he already alluded to it. He got ripped apart for the way he approached it, but he sees these guys every single day in practice. One game against a shitty Bears team is not going to make or break an evaluation. It's the only thing it's going to do is satisfy a fan base desperate and praying that Kellen Mond is something more than what we think he is, which as of this moment, as of today, all we know about Kellen Mond is that he's ass. That could change, but that's just what we know. And that's
Sure,
my reason for not
and I
putting
agree.
backups out there.
And I agree with you to a certain extent. Like, yes, of course, we want to see quality product, but the quality product that we've put out there has lost us 9 games or 8 games or whatever it is, right? 9 games, right? So they've already lost us 9 games. They've already gotten us out of playoff contention. So I've seen what I need to see out of that. Like, that's over with now. There's no point to play those starters and risk injury. Again, like I said, if Justin Jefferson goes out there and he tears a patella, we're done. We're done. Not this year. We're already done this year. Now we're done next year because we're without our best receiver. Thielen can't stay healthy anymore. You have KJ Osborne on staff, and that's about it. And what are you going to do? Why? So you said there's zero. You said there's zero incentive. You're right. There is zero incentive, but there's also like the risk reward. And again, it's very unlikely that an injury does happen or a significant injury happens. They don't happen all that often, but it could. And you can make that 2% or 3% chance 0% by seeing what you have in some young talent. That's all I'm trying to say. Is I was excited about ISM at the beginning of the year. I thought maybe he would win the wide receiver 3 job. I want to see what he has. He caught a touchdown earlier this year. That's cool. I want to see what else he has. And I don't want to see Sean Mannion. Like, that's just Wyatt Davis. Wyatt Davis had a pretty darn good preseason, and we haven't. And Blake Brandel's getting
against 2s and 3s.
Sure, but Blake Brandel's getting snaps over him in the regular season,
and he can't beat Dakota Dozier out.
So, but like, why? like where is that coming? Like, we gotta see it in action. Like, I gotta see, like, what the hell. I mean, I never had the super high hopes like for Wyatt Davis, like a lot of fans did. I know a lot of fans did. I
thought he was going to be able to take that next step and be the guard we wanted. He had the strength. He had the ability, especially the year before he came into not his senior year, but his junior year. No, it looked promising. But there are players that hit the NFL that were very, very good in college, and they just flame out. You can list tons of Heisman winners that just don't make it. You can name some first-round drafted quarterbacks that are crap, right, and just don't make it. It's same goes with linemen. There's some that just can't make that transition, and for some reason, he seems to be one of them. Part of it is poor choices. He came in overweight for a guard and out of shape, right? You can be overweight, but you can't be out of shape. He was out of shape when he came to camp. That instantly puts you in the doghouse, right? Now you've got to work twice as hard to get out of it. He's never done that. He hasn't done it to where he can move up anywhere up the depth chart. He's played a dozen or 2 snaps on special teams, and he can't make it off of that, right? And that's limited. There's something wrong there. And yes, I wanted him to be big, and I want to start. We're all talking about, hey, by game 6, he's going to win that starting job, and it's all going to be great, and our line's so improved. And our line is a little bit improved this year, but he never scratched the surface. And that is worrisome. Why wasn't
David Yankee? I'm sorry.
David Yankee was a great coach.
Has had a better.
No, I know, career. But that name is just so funny because it is very similar, but it's just a name I've completely erased from my memory. So,
well, think of another one, Willie Beavers. He's starting this week.
Yeah. That's gross. Real quick here, we talked about the earlier in the show, the fans. We've gone on our tangents, and that's great. Some of the fans, the people here watching the show, I really appreciate you guys all. You put some questions out here. I want to talk about one real quick because obviously I have a close connection to this player, at least in my heart.
Oh man.
Clifford a while ago, and I scrolled back up to find it because I wanted to make sure I answered this. Clifford had posed a question. Browns call the Vikings, and they want to swap Mayfield and Kirk Cousins plus their first, and I think we have to give up a third. Would you do it?
Did you, did you pay him to put that in there? Because that is too close to what we've been talking about in
In
other
our chat?
chats.
No, I literally didn't. He literally just offered that out there,
It's been
and
out in the Twitter
and
sphere. People have talked about it.
and yeah, I mean, of course, you know, you
Some
look at
score
the
North
teams that
Carolina.
need a you look at teams that maybe need a quarterback, right? You got like the Steelers, right? They have a quarterback retiring. They have a good team outside of the quarterback. You have the Browns, great team, poised for a playoff run or a Super Bowl run. Need a quarterback. Obviously, I think they have a quarterback, but he's been injured all year. You know, you got the Broncos, Panthers even have a decent defense. Like you got all these teams. So we look at the Browns. We talk about this in the Climb in the Pocket like group chat, and then Matt and I and Miles and one of our other buddies who have a kind of a smaller group chat. We talked about this exact scenario today. And I think most of us are on board. I think, you know, if you can get a first round pick coming back to you for Kirk Cousins, and then of course you can get a quarterback with Baker Mayfield's talent and pedigree. Again, he played awful this year. It was his worst season as a pro. He did not show up. And you look at the last 3 quarters of last season for the guy. Played, I think he was like graded out as like a top 6, top 7 quarterback. And then you go and you look at the Kansas City game, and he lit up Kansas City and played really well. And then against Houston, at the beginning of that game, he like completed like 9 for 9 or 8 for 8 or something like that. And then he went down with an injury. And ever since then, he had a couple peaks, but a lot of valleys. I would absolutely do that. You have your 5th-year option for him that he's going to play under next year. As Miles Gorham had said in our chat, you have the ability at that point then to franchise him. So let's say next year he plays great, and then you go and franchise him to make him prove it, and then you can give him a big contract. That's great. I mean, that puts us in a position to have an opportunity, and then in the meantime, you can still go and draft a guy or two. Mm-hmm. And see what they have. If you want to draft somebody this year, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett. I know some people are really high on Carson Strong. I need to look, do some more diving into his tape. There's some talent at quarterback that's not super high end, but it's not always the super high end talent that ends up being great NFL quarterbacks. Tom Brady's a good example. Russell Wilson. I mean, there's a lot of examples out there of guys who aren't picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 who end up being great talents. I absolutely would go that route if it was an option. I don't think it ever will be. I don't think that anyone's going to get, not anyone. I don't think that the Browns and their front office are dumb enough, so to speak, to give us a first round pick for Kirk Cousins, all well knowing that they're going to have to pay him a massive contract extension because he's playing on a $35 million cap hit for them. However, I think it's possible that if that was a possibility, I absolutely would do it, Clifford.
Raymond, at least every other year.
I agree with Ryan. I agree with what Dave just responded to Raymond as well. There are a few questions in here, and we said that we'd get to them. So if you have more, keep firing them in there, and we will try to answer them. I want to talk about Nicholas's question. Will the Gritty stay in Minnesota after the 5th-year option? I don't want to, cast doubt on the future of Justin Jefferson here. But historically speaking, when it comes to our star wide receivers outside of Adam Thielen, they have all left. And we've seen Randy Moss make his way out of town. We've seen Sidney Rice make his way out of town. We've seen Percy Harvin make his way out of town. We've seen Stephon Diggs make his way out of town. I think these next few years are going to be very pivotal for the future of Justin Jefferson. I do think he'll probably sign a contract extension because why wouldn't he? The Vikings can give him a boatload of money. But I think maybe shortly after that,
it depends on who's here and what the organization is like. If
exactly.
If we land a star quarterback that feeds him daily, um, every game.
He'll
He's
be
not
happy.
going anywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
When you mention Randy Moss or
Percy Harvin, Sidney
Percy,
Rice. I
right?
mean, they all
Or Percy, and then you have our boy here,
Diggs.
Diggsy. There's always been some bad quarterback and bad offensive calling, something bad that's happened. So
Yeah.
if that bad doesn't happen, then you're golden. And that's what we hope that with a new regime coming in, if the Wilfs
Yeah.
make the correct decisions, and we get lucky because there is luck in football, that we can have him a long time. We can have him hopefully his whole career, and he sets all sorts of NFL records, goes to the Hall of Fame. But it
Yeah.
depends on how things change. Before I say
JJ
he
needs
leaves.
his Joe Burrow.
Yeah,
Like, look how
Yep.
happy Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase look. If you get that
And T.
tandem,
Higgins. Oh my goodness!
if you get
Like
that
that
tandem,
offense. Oh.
you can flourish.
I mean, you look at that offense. They got Chase, Higgins, Mixon. Like
Yeah.
Tyler
It's-
Boyd isn't even talked about anymore. And he would be well, I guess he'd be our third receiver too, probably. But like, I mean, they got
Still,
some
man, that's
talent on that offense. Hey, Dan Hanneman, he put a comment in here. Of course, any comment that's going to come with any Oklahoma ties I'm going to address. He said we should have drafted Creed Humphrey instead of Mon and Wyatt Davis. I 100% agree. I was banging the table for it. We all know that I was banging the table for Creed Humphrey. And when I realized that day 2 of the draft, I was off running errands or something, and I'm like watching it on my phone. I'm like, how is Creed Humphrey still on the board? And it was like the end of the second round almost. I'm like, trade up. We didn't, and now he's the best graded football center in football, and they have a staple in that offense for 4 years, and likely they'll extend him for 10, 15 years. And
Yeah.
I mean, we all knew it. We all knew that was going to be there. So
come draft time,
Who's the-
you guys were on the live draft show, and I remember you pounding the table. Next time we might listen. Maybe the Vikings will listen.
I'm telling you guys, I should be a GM or something. I hit on
who's
Jalen
the
Johnson,
Saints
Creed
guard?
Humphrey.
Who's the Saints
which-
guard that we missed out on? Or was it a center back then too? McCoy.
Eric
That
that was Eric McCoy. That's a center, and then they also drafted Cesar Ruiz, who I liked a lot. They've hit a lot on their offensive line drafts. Yeah.
I think our one of our favorite people, Mary, asked us a question here, and so I'll let us each go through one of these quick. I'll go first because everyone knows my answer. But of the 3 choices, which one would you stick with if you just can pick one? Kirk, Zim, or Spielman? For me, I'm picking Zimmer. I think he's been horribly unlucky. Spielman has had 12 plus years to figure his shit out, and he just hasn't quite done it. The 2015 draft class is still kind of carrying him along, and he, in my opinion, lucked into Justin Jefferson because the Eagles butchered that. In Kirk, good quarterback makes too much. So, Ryan, what do you think?
If I had to pick one,
Just one.
That's just it.
yeah, if I had to just pick one, that's tough. Because I'm ready
Whatever
to move
you
on
say.
from all of them. I would
I
pick
might clip it.
Spielman. I pick Spielman. I don't care if you clip this. I'll pick Spielman. But I hope if we pick Spielman, it's in the form of a demotion to some advisor role, because I don't want. I'm ready for a whole new change. But I'll guess Spielman.
Both Spielman and Zimmer will be paid next year and into the following year, whether they're earning a paycheck or not. They're getting paid because of their contracts.
Because of their contracts, yeah. So
I'll
take Spielman, I guess, just given the fact that he, just we need a new voice in the locker room. I think Zimmer's position is the most important of them all. I mean, quarterback is the most important, but Zimmer, the head coach, can really drive a culture change, and I love it, Wayne. I love it. But the head coach really drives how well
the team progresses and not progresses. I mean, you see it year in and year out with all these different coaches, and if you have a great coach, you can really move forward, move mountains. And I just Zim's had that opportunity. He's been unlucky with that opportunity, but he's had the opportunity. Mountains were not moved, and it's time to move on.
Yeah. Dave, what are
I
your
agree
thoughts?
with Wayne. Option E, none of the above.
Fair enough.
They all need to go.
Um,
It's all their faults.
yeah. Uh, GMac asked a question earlier. He said, "Who do you want for GM?" I'm gonna leave you guys with some suspense there. Uh, we will dive into that next week. I think I want to kind of see where the chips fall. I don't want to speculate about something a little bit more prematurely. What were you deucing on there, Ryan?
Oh, I was to say maybe too. I'm not going to be a part of the show next week. I apologize. I'll be in Disney, and I'm not going to
Telling me
miss
live
out
on
on
air?
my.
You got to send
I'm
us
not
some
going to miss.
clips of you screaming going down the kiddie roller coaster.
That Wednesday we're going to be at Hollywood Studios, so we'll be on the Rise of the Resistance ride at some
Oh,
point.
that
So
should
maybe
be
I can
fun.
clip
Star
that.
Wars.
Oh,
Yeah, it should be good. Yeah,
Being shot at by
Brandon's a big.
stormtroopers.
Yeah, Brandon's a big fan of that one. But yeah, I mean, I have some GM candidates in mind. I know whoever fills in for me next week likely will as well. But if you don't cover it next week, in 2 weeks I can help dive into that as well.
Oh, and that's going to be an interesting question coming up too. Will the Wilfs hire a GM and allow the GM to pick the coach, or will the Wilfs pick a coach and then a GM and tell them to work together, or a GM and then the coach and tell them, hey, toughen up, we're picking both of you guys. Now you got to make it work. That's going to be an interesting question we find out hopefully next week. So,
And
yeah.
in my opinion, I think that's a tough situation, because I think if we do move on from Zimmer, I'm a relatively big believer that a GM should pick a coach, because as we've seen it play out in front of our eyes, it's very important for those two to be very locked in together. And if they're not,
100%.
it creates issues. So, but if we move on from Spielman, we need to find a GM like yesterday, because we don't have a lot of time before a lot of these head coaches, candidates that maybe are intriguing, are going to start being picked off. So
right,
we're going to really need to do it right away.
I'll take Chicago.
Yeah,
I'll take this. Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, you've got to move quick on all your decisions, which I think is why they're meeting preemptively, right? Like they want to make sure they're meeting before this game, and they're going to hit the ground running on Sunday night after the game. Dave, I sent you a picture
There it is.
over Twitter, and I wanted, for those who are watching tonight, I wasn't on last week. We didn't have a show. But I wanted to show everybody what my parents got me, which I will start drinking from as soon as I start partaking again. So we'll just wait for Dave.
It's
Dave
going
to
to
bring
take
this
a while.
picture
I
up
got to
here.
go to original post, which it's not going to allow me to do. Damn it.
Well, if it doesn't work, then we'll figure it out for maybe next week.
We'll do it next week.
Anyway, I mean, do you guys have any questions? I don't know. I think this was a great show. I had a great time.
We love the interaction in the comments.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask people in the comments, have you been enjoying the Vikings Daily Sit Rep that Jason and I have started to put out this week in earnest? You eventually see other folks from Climbing the Pocket do it when Jason and I take a day off or two. Has that been beneficial? It's a recorded show, usually goes up in the afternoon around lunchtime, somewhere in there. And
Dave, I did
Hope
see
you've
some
enjoyed
people comment earlier that they've enjoyed it. I mean, it was way up at the top, so I mean, we could probably scroll through the comments. It looks like Raymond says he has. Honestly, it's a great show. I mean, I love it. It's quick, it's good, it's super good content within it. I'd love to be one of the guests on it at some point. I mean,
Well, you
it's
get your
just
chance.
it's fun. It's fun. I'm really proud of this team over the last I don't know. I've been part of this group for about 2 years now. In terms of on this show, I've been in part of the group chats and stuff for a little longer. But for on shows and stuff, you guys were dumb enough to let me on air about 2 years ago, and it's just been such a
We got
great
nothing but
experience.
Oklahoma since.
Well, yeah, and you'll continue to, but it's really been such a great experience for me. I think all of the whole crew, from Jason, our fearless leader, to Dave, our fearless. I mean, literally, we're nothing without you, Dave. And then everyone in between with Miles and Matt and Yinka, one of the founding members, JR, who's on the greener pastures with ESPN. But literally, it's just been such a great crew, great experience. I think that, a lot of great content being put out for Viking fans who want I'm not going to sit here and say we're, blowing sunshines and rainbows up your ass, because we're not. We're never going to be that. We like to be relatively real on this show and provide a realistic perspective. And sometimes it's not what we want to hear, and sometimes we're off base, and sometimes we're wrong too. But at the end of the day, we're being genuine and honest, and I think that the fans enjoy that. Viking fans, not the fans of the show per se, but and it's just been a great experience. I think everyone does a great job, including you, Matt, even though you're sober.
I want to answer a couple questions here real quick. Nicholas,
Yeah, go
Drew,
for
and
it.
Ted are doing their own show. It's called Vikings Report. You can catch it. They have a YouTube channel. You can catch it on YouTube, and they do post it on Daily Norseman as well. They did leave Climbing the Pocket Network side after last year. They had a different vision. Theirs is more humor and slapstick, and you'll see that over there. It's quite entertaining. I'd highly encourage you to go find it and watch it again, because it can be very, very fun to watch. And the other question I wanted to answer was, Steven asked, what is SITREP? SITREP is an acronym that's short for Situation Report or Situational Report. And the whole idea of that show, or that brief, we hope it to be 2 to 5 minutes minimum, up to about 10 max. But we want to hit a highlight of what's happening in the Viking sphere, whether it be on blogs, on news sites, on television, wherever there's Viking news, that we can grab at least one item and talk about it with you. Something that you may not have thought about, something different.
Yeah.
And we may get off on a silly side. We may talk about pickle juice and Sean Mannion drinking pickle juice during the last game. But it's hopefully something that will help you stick, to this team throughout the year. We wanted to do it daily. We may not get to daily quite yet, even though we've gone 3 days in a row so far. But we want to do that so you have a connection to the team, to us. We want to have a connection with you guys. That's the big deal. And that we keep growing our fandom together. And hopefully there is good times around the corner, right? That we're moving
Absolutely.
on up. And hopefully in the next regime, we'll see the big house. And we'll be,
If there is a next regime.
contending. Yeah, we'll be contending. And we'll be competing for a Super Bowl. And we'll hopefully get our first Super Bowl win before I check out. So that's what the show's all about. It's just to keep us connected with you guys and connected with the Vikings world, because we love it.
Yep.
This is the team, as I said on the show, that we want to love, and we're going to try to foster that for everybody.
Dave, I got one more thing before we wrap this up. Raymond asked if we're going to do action reviews on draft picks and whatever. The off season is maybe some of my funnest times with Climbing the Pocket, especially around draft time. We'll be live that whole weekend as we were last year. If you want to see what that's like, you can head over to our YouTube page and check it out. All those videos are still there, including me and Ryan frustrated that the Vikings didn't trade up for Justin Fields, live in the moment. Like, we're watching pick after pick for 3 straight days, and it's super fun. And as far as
And we
this
had
show
some
goes,
great guests.
yeah,
Really,
we had some great
great
guests for
guests.
that
Like,
weekend
yeah.
thing. And we'll have those guests as well throughout the offseason. I mean, last year leading up to the draft, we had, former defensive back Eric Crocker, who played for the New York Jets. We had Thor Nystrom from NBC Sports Edge. Jordan Reed, now with ESPN, is always kind enough to stop by. Plus people like
Doogie.
Darren Wolfson, Phil Mackey,
Jeff
Matthew Caller,
Zolgad,
Luke Braun, all your favorites. They'll be here,
Matthew
and I can
Collar.
guarantee you that we will get a good chunk of them back. So,
And we'll try to
um,
get Courtney, but we tried last year, but there's a deal with her contract but we're going to try.
yeah, absolutely. So,
All your favorite beat writers.
thank you,
basically.
everybody.
And we're gonna be around all off season. I'm not gonna sit here and say, it might not be every week. Obviously, there's gonna be some dead weeks potentially that we end up sitting one out. But Matt and I are gonna try to be here. Obviously, we appreciate everyone watching. We'd love to have you on. Even maybe as a guest at times. We'd love to get some of the people who are watching involved a little bit here and there as we can. It's just been a lot of fun. Hopefully, we get some fun guests throughout the off season. I know Doogie had said that he'd be able to join us sometime here in January, so that'd be a good opportunity for us to try to lock him in again. And so obviously, what I provide to the team is a little bit of draft coverage, right? Like I do a lot of scouting, like at home couch scouting. So I'm not a professional or anything like that, but I do try to provide some perspective. So I'll be working with the team to try to provide some scouting reports and things like that. Tyler Fornes, who maybe is a little bit more dedicated to that. I think this is his career.
He's now got the gig at USA Today
NBC.
and NBC.
NBC,
Yeah.
exactly. So, at some point we'll likely lose him to some of those opportunities. So I'm always going to be here for you. I'm never going to be trying to make this a career. This is more just a fan that just loves the Vikings and wants to see what's best for us. And what's best for us is to draft as many Oklahoma Sooners as possible. So let's keep that
I
going.
think, Dave,
They're good.
Dave, with that comment there, I think it's time to cut the mic. I think it's time to end this show. So for everybody in chat, I want to thank you tonight. You were lighting up the comments. If you haven't already, I know some of our fans have alluded to it, but like the video, like our Facebook page, like our Instagram, YouTube. It's all out there. So like and share, and let's enjoy this off season together. And for the last time leading up to a game, Dave, what do we say?
Skull Vikings! Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody!